Day 1. Sergeant Miller's voice, roughened by years of radio squawk and bellowed commands, cut through the morning's murmur. O'Malley, Sector 4, foot beat. Main Street, Elm to the bakery. Keep a lid on it. He flung a well-used radio and notepad across the scarred desk. Kevin's reflexes failed, both nearly hit the floor. Understood, sir. Sector 4. Elm to the bakery. He gripped the radio, suddenly vital. Miller just grunted, already unleashing instructions on another greenhorn. Kevin, pulse skittering like a trapped bird, beat a retreat to the locker room. The starched blue uniform, donned with haste, felt both like armor and a noose. This was it. Officer Kevin O'Malley, guardian of the peace, the law's shield. Images flashed, late nights buried in textbooks, the crucible of physical training, countless simulated scenarios, all converging on this singular moment. A dizzy spell threatened. He splashed bracing water on his face, confronting his reflection. Boyish features, earnest, almost pleading eyes. He looked younger than his 23 years, younger than the weight he now carried. He needed to project command, not uncertainty. Shoulders squared, cap adjusted, he sucked in a breath. Outside, the air hung heavy with exhaust fumes and the enticing aroma of roasting coffee beans. Main Street throbbed with early activity. Shopkeepers wrestled with stubborn locks, delivery trucks grumbled past, and commuters streamed along the pavement, their faces set. He walked with intent, fighting the swarm of butterflies in his stomach. The first hour unfolded uneventfully. He offered polite nods to the few who met his gaze, pausing occasionally to study window displays. A florist, coaxing lilies into a vibrant arrangement, offered a bright smile. "Lovely day, officer." "Indeed," he responded, a flicker of real assurance igniting. "Doing my best to maintain it." Continuing his circuit, his senses were peeled. A shattered streetlight, a discarded newspaper dancing against a storefront, a youth lurking near the jewelry store entrance, his hands buried deep within his pockets. Kevin filed each observation away, scrupulously noting it in his pad. He aspired to be thorough, conscientious, an asset to the force. He reached the bakery, the seductive scent of cinnamon and sugar permeating the air. He pictured his father, a retired mail carrier, at the kitchen table, relishing a coffee and a sweet roll. His father, who had always championed his aspirations, even when they seemed impossibly out of reach. Kevin halted, surveying the energetic street. He wasn't simply enforcing regulations, he was safeguarding lives, protecting livelihoods, preserving order. He was a cog in something far larger than himself, a beacon of order in a world hungry for it. He made a silent pledge to execute his duty with honor, grit, and empathy. He would be the kind of cop he'd always revered, the one who offered a hand, not just a cuff. He would make a tangible difference. He had to. Red convertible on Main Street. Kevin O'Malley coasted down Main Street, the patrol car's gentle thrum a soothing drone against the quiet of the early afternoon. Storefronts displaying remnants of holiday cheer stood like steadfast guardians along the avenue. Mrs. Henderson tended her petunias outside Henderson's haberdashery, her silver hair catching the pale winter sun. Across the way, Mr. Abernathy meticulously swept the sidewalk before his hardware store, each motion measured and unhurried. This was the tranquil tableau Kevin had envisioned when he signed up for small-town law enforcement. Serene. Predictable. Then, a streak of carmine. A red convertible, its top defiantly down against the chill, roared into view, shattering the peace. Kevin's gaze flicked to his speedometer, 45 in a 25 zone. Adrenaline surged, a disorienting blend of anticipation and pure dread. The moment had arrived. His first solo stop. He tightened his grip on the wheel, his knuckles gleaming white. "Easy, O'Malley," he murmured, "stick to the script." He flicked on the overhead lights, the sudden blaze of crimson and azure slicing through the drowsy air. A brief, piercing wail from the siren made him wince, heat rising in his collar. The red convertible pressed on. Kevin's pulse leaped. Had she even noticed? He leaned on the horn, a full-throated blast echoing off the brick facades. Finally, brake lights bloomed. The convertible wobbled slightly before lurching to a halt at the curb. Kevin eased the patrol car to a stop, carefully positioning it according to Academy protocol. The click of the gearshift into park seemed jarringly loud in the sudden hush. He inhaled deeply, attempting to calm the nervous flutter in his stomach. A quick glance in the rearview mirror, he smoothed his uniform, straightened his hat. He felt like a rookie all over again. "Here we go," he breathed. He released his seatbelt, the familiar weight of his duty belt a grounding presence. Reaching for the door handle, his palm felt slick and clammy. Stepping onto the cold asphalt, the air bit with a sharper, crisper edge than inside the vehicle. Eyes fixed on the convertible, instinct taking over, he assessed the situation. Single occupant. Top down. No visible signs of trouble. He began to walk towards the vehicle, the rhythmic crunch of his boots on the roadside gravel the only sound aside from the purring engine. He could feel the frantic beat of his heart in his ears. This was it. He was a police officer. He was on the job. Behind the wheel. The crimson convertible sat idling on the shoulder, a defiant splash of color against the drab asphalt. Kevin O'Malley took a deep breath, the scent of pine needles sharp in his nostrils. This was it. His first solo traffic stop. He adjusted his belt, the leather creaking softly, and double-checked his grip on the flashlight. Nerves coiled in his stomach, a cold, tight knot. He approached the car cautiously, his boots crunching on the gravel. The top was down, revealing a woman with silver hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Oversized sunglasses obscured most of her face, but he could see a hint of a smile playing on her lips. She radiated an unnerving calm. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Kevin said, trying to keep his voice steady. He fumbled for his notepad. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" The woman tilted her head slightly. "Officer, I have absolutely no idea." Her voice was smooth, almost melodic, with a faint hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. Kevin swallowed, feeling his throat constrict. "Your tail light is out, ma'am. Safety hazard." He scribbled something illegible on his pad, pretending to take notes. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the chirping of crickets in the nearby woods. "I see," she said, her gaze unwavering behind the dark lenses. "Well, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. Could I see your license and registration, please?" He managed to keep his voice level this time, almost proud of himself. She reached into a leather handbag on the passenger seat and retrieved a slim wallet. Her movements were deliberate, graceful. She handed him a driver's license and a registration card. The license was from out of state, somewhere far away. He squinted at the name, a long string of syllables he couldn't pronounce. The registration was even more confusing, filled with numbers and foreign characters. He flipped through the documents, stalling for time. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He was supposed to be looking for, what, exactly? Suspicious activity? Something out of place? All he saw was expensive leather and impenetrable bureaucracy. "Everything in order, officer?" she asked, her voice still calm, still unsettlingly amused. Kevin cleared his throat. "Just, one moment, ma'am." He retreated to his patrol car, the gravel spitting beneath his boots. He leaned against the hood, the cool metal a welcome sensation against his clammy skin. He took another deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He had to remember his training. Observe. Assess. Act. But all he could think about was the woman's steady gaze and the expensive car. This wasn't how he had imagined his first stop going. Eleanor Thompson. The woman didn't so much as twitch at the sharp command. Composure personified, she simply reached into her handbag, the delicate snap of the closure cutting through the oppressive stillness. A sophisticated perfume, a heady blend of jasmine and something subtly spicy, now perfumed the air, vying with the damp earthiness rising from the rain-slicked road. A slender, elegantly adorned hand emerged, offering a leather wallet. "License and registration, officer." Her tone was as smooth and polished as fine mahogany. Kevin's throat constricted, he swallowed hard. Accepting the proffered documents, his fingers grazed hers. He fought to hold her gaze, his eyes betraying him as they darted to the identification. A nervous cough escaped him. "Thank you," he managed. The radio buzzed, a burst of static heralding an announcement. "All units, be advised, Chief Thompson will be gracing the Police Benevolent Association luncheon at the Grand Ballroom this afternoon. Estimated time of arrival, 1,230 hours. Let's make a good impression, people." Kevin's head jerked up. Chief Thompson. Eleanor Thompson. His gut clenched. He fumbled with the proffered ID, his pulse a frantic drum against his ribs. His gaze flew from the woman's face to the photograph laminated on the plastic. The resemblance was there, though the years had softened the angles evident in the picture. He scrutinized the name printed below, Eleanor Thompson. That surname. Implausible, surely. He turned to the registration. The vehicle was registered to one Eleanor Thompson, at an address on Hilltop Drive, a postcode synonymous with old money, sprawling estates, and secrets hidden behind wrought iron. He reconsidered the woman before him, truly examined her. The unyielding set of her shoulders, the unwavering steadiness in her gaze. The impeccable tailoring of her suit, hinting at untold wealth even in the gloom. A wave of vertigo threatened to overwhelm him. He'd pulled over the chief's relative. Matriarch. Consort. Panic seized him. He had to explain himself, justify the stop. He opened his mouth, but only a strangled sound emerged. He cleared his throat again, attempting to find his voice. "Ma'am, the words evaporated, his face burning with shame. He hadn't even verbalized a plausible pretense for the stop. Faulty taillight. Pathetic. He berated himself for his lack of foresight. A greenhorn, venturing into dangerous waters. The chief arrives. The high-pitched whine of another siren cut through the muggy air. Kevin O'Malley's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drummer in a solo act. He watched in his rearview mirror as a second patrol car, sleeker and newer than his own, pulled up behind him, its flashing lights painting the already agitated scene in strobing blues and reds. This wasn't just backup, this was overkill. The driver's side door swung open and a figure unfolded from the vehicle. It was Chief Thompson. Kevin swallowed hard. The chief rarely left the station for anything less than a major incident. His presence here, at what was supposed to be a routine traffic stop, felt ominous. Thompson stood for a moment, the afternoon sun glinting off his neatly trimmed gray hair. He was a solid man, built like a linebacker, but his face, usually etched with the worries of the town, was unreadable. Kevin could see the faintest flicker of surprise there, a micro-expression that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Instead of approaching Kevin, as protocol dictated, the chief moved with deliberate steps toward the red convertible. He ignored Kevin completely, walking with a purpose that suggested he knew exactly where he was going and exactly who he intended to see. The air crackled with unspoken questions. Kevin felt like a bystander in his own traffic stop, a puppet whose strings had been cut. Thompson stopped a few feet from the driver's side of the convertible. He straightened his tie, a gesture Kevin had seen him make countless times before meetings with the town council. It was a nervous habit, a subtle tic that betrayed the calm facade he usually projected. He leaned slightly toward the car, his expression softening. Kevin strained to hear what he was saying, but the words were lost in the hum of the idling engines and the distant chirping of crickets. Whatever he was saying, it seemed to be working. The driver, who had been rigid with defiance just moments ago, visibly relaxed. Kevin felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Had he overreacted? Was he about to be reprimanded in front of whoever this woman was? He adjusted his grip on his notepad, his knuckles white. The sun beat down on his back, amplifying his discomfort. He was sweating through his uniform, the starched fabric clinging uncomfortably to his skin. He had to know what was happening. He took a tentative step toward the convertible, then another. The chief hadn't acknowledged him, hadn't even glanced in his direction. It was as if he were invisible. As he drew closer, Kevin could finally make out the chief's words, spoken in a tone that was both respectful and affectionate. "Ma, I swear, you and this car." A salute and a ma'am. Kevin's gut twisted. He fiddled with the pen in his pocket, the metallic click a nervous counterpoint to the chirping crickets. Chief Thompson hadn't said a word since they'd pulled over. Just stood there, ramrod straight, watching the approaching vehicle. Kevin felt like a prop, a poorly placed traffic cone in a meticulously staged scene. The car, a vintage convertible the color of a ripe cherry, purred as it slowed. The morning sun glinted off its chrome, momentarily blinding Kevin. As it drew level, he could see the driver, a woman with silver hair swept back from her face, a pair of oversized sunglasses perched on her nose. She radiated an effortless cool, a quiet power that resonated even from behind the wheel. Then, Chief Thompson did something that made Kevin's jaw drop. He snapped to attention. His shoulders squared, his hand rose in a crisp, precise salute. "Good morning, ma'am." His voice, usually a gravelly rumble, was now smooth, almost deferential. The woman in the convertible smiled, a flash of white teeth against her sun-kissed skin. She lowered her sunglasses, her eyes, a startling shade of green, met Kevin's for a fleeting second, then flicked back to the chief. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, a connection Kevin couldn't decipher. "Harold," she said, her voice a low, melodious hum that carried on the morning breeze. "Everything all right, Harold?" Kevin blinked. He'd never heard anyone call Chief Thompson Harold. It was always Chief, or Sir, even amongst the other officers. This woman. She addressed him by his first name like he was some kid. "Just ensuring everyone's following the rules, Mother," Thompson replied, his salute unwavering. The word mother hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Kevin swallowed hard. Mother? This stylish woman, this queen of the open road, was Chief Thompson's mother. The idea seemed preposterous, a glitch in the matrix of his understanding of the world. He suddenly felt a wave of sympathy for his superior, picturing the internal struggle between duty and filial piety playing out behind that stoic facade. Eleanor Thompson chuckled, a warm, throaty sound. "Rules are for those who need them, Harold. You know I always drive with the utmost care." She winked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Besides, I was just bringing over some of my famous apple pie for everyone at the station." Kevin, still reeling, watched as Chief Thompson's rigid posture relaxed, just a fraction. "I appreciate that, Mother. But you know I have to do my job." "Of course, dear. Wouldn't want you shirking your responsibilities." She gave a final, knowing smile. "Carry on, then. And tell Mary the first said hello." With a gentle tap on the accelerator, the cherry-red convertible glided away, leaving Kevin standing dumbfounded in a cloud of exhaust and disbelief. Testing the speed limit. Kevin swallowed, the metallic tang of adrenaline still clinging to his tongue. The woman emerging from the vintage Thunderbird was unlike anyone he'd ever pulled over. Scarlet scarf, oversized sunglasses, and a smile that could melt asphalt. She moved with a grace that belied the car's roaring engine. "Officer," she began, her voice a melodious hum that cut through the lingering hum of the engine. "Is there a problem?" Before Kevin could stammer out the Miranda rights, Chief Thompson stepped forward, his usually placid face creased with a barely perceptible exasperation. "Mother," he said, his tone a careful balance of respect and authority. "Were you aware of the speed limit on Elm Street?" The woman, Eleanor, Kevin now realized, remembering snippets of town gossip, chuckled, a light, airy sound. She pushed her sunglasses up, revealing eyes that held a mischievous glint. "Harold, darling, must we do this in front of your officer?" "Harold." She called him Harold. Kevin's stomach churned. This was going from bad to, potentially career-ending. "Officer O'Malley was simply doing his job, Mother," Chief Thompson replied, his gaze flicking briefly to Kevin, a silent message he couldn't decipher. Was it reassurance? Warning? Pity? Eleanor Thompson rounded the hood of the Thunderbird, her red lipstick a vibrant slash against her porcelain skin. She placed a hand on her son's arm, her touch surprisingly firm. "Now, Harold, don't be stuffy. I was merely testing the speed limit." She winked, the gesture entirely too charming for someone who'd just been clocked doing 60 in a 35 zone. Chief Thompson sighed, a sound like air leaking from a tire. He pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture Kevin had seen him do only during the most stressful budget meetings. When he lowered his hand, his expression was carefully neutral. "Officer O'Malley, perhaps you could escort my mother home? I believe she's had enough excitement for one afternoon." "Escort?" Kevin echoed, his voice cracking slightly. Escort meant, no ticket? No official report? Eleanor beamed at her son. "That's very thoughtful of you, Harold. I do hate driving alone." She then turned to Kevin, her smile radiating warmth. "Hop in, officer. I'll tell you all about Harold's embarrassing childhood." Chief Thompson turned to Kevin, a knowing look in his eyes, a look that said, "Good luck, and possibly, I owe you one." Or maybe it was, "You're on your own, kid." Kevin couldn't be sure. He could only manage a weak nod, his mind a chaotic jumble of traffic laws, familial obligations, and the unsettling realization that his first real arrest might be turning into a very awkward chauffeuring gig. A legend revealed. Kevin O'Malley shifted in the uncomfortable plastic chair, the fluorescent lights of Chief Thompson's office buzzing a nervous counterpoint to the hum in his ears. He hadn't been formally reprimanded, not yet, but the summons to the chief's office after the Eleanor incident felt like a prelude to professional oblivion. "Kevin," Thompson began, his voice a low rumble that usually inspired confidence but now felt like a gathering storm. "About this morning." Kevin swallowed, the lump in his throat feeling like a golf ball. "Chief, I followed procedure. The car was speeding, erratic driving. I didn't know." Thompson held up a hand, stopping Kevin's stammering. "I know you didn't. That's why you're here." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. "That woman, Eleanor, she's family." Kevin's jaw dropped. "Family? Sir, I assumed she was a VIP. Some council member's wife." A ghost of a smile touched Thompson's lips. "Something like that. She's my mother, Kevin." The words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Kevin felt a fresh wave of anxiety wash over him. He'd nearly arrested the chief's mother. "Eleanor Thompson," the chief continued, his voice taking on a different tone, a mixture of respect and exasperation. "She likes to keep us on our toes. Always has." He swiveled in his chair, looking out the window at the bustling town square. "She was the first female officer in this town, you know. Back when they barely let women answer the phones, let alone carry a badge." Kevin's mind struggled to reconcile the image of the fiery Eleanor from this morning with the idea of a pioneering policewoman battling sexism and criminals. She broke down barriers, Kevin. Faced down prejudice, corruption. And some pretty nasty characters. Thompson turned back, a hint of pride in his eyes. "There's a reason she's a legend around here. Stories about Eleanor, they're practically folklore." He chuckled softly, a sound that eased some of the tension in the room. "One time, back in the 70s, there was a bank robbery. The suspects got away clean, or so they thought. Eleanor tracked them down to an abandoned lumber mill, all alone, armed with nothing but her service revolver and a pack of cigarettes. She single-handedly apprehended all three of them, recovered the stolen money, and even managed to get them to confess on tape before backup arrived. Kevin stared, dumbfounded. She did all that, alone. That's Eleanor, Thompson said, a weary but fond smile playing on his lips. She never played by the rules, not exactly. Always did things her own way. Sometimes, he sighed, it makes my job a little complicated. He steepled his fingers. She believes in justice, Kevin. Ferociously. And she doesn't care about rank or protocol if she thinks something's not right. Sometimes I think she's testing us all, making sure we're worthy of the badge we wear. The chief's words offered a sliver of understanding, a fragile life raft in the sea of Kevin's anxiety. Maybe he wasn't necessarily about to be fired. Maybe he'd just unwittingly stumbled into some kind of family game. So, Thompson said, his voice regaining its usual authoritative tone. What did you learn this morning, Kevin? Kevin straightened his shoulders, the weight of his anxiety shifting slightly. That I need to be aware of my surroundings, sir. And that, legends sometimes drive vintage convertibles. Respectfully, ma'am. A flush hotter than a furnace seared Kevin O'Malley's cheeks. His pulse hammered in his ears. He yearned for the earth to open up and swallow him. Patagonia would do nicely. Eyes glued to the worn leather of his standard-issue boots, he replayed the disastrous scene, the ill-considered words, the emphatically unauthorized halt signal he'd given with his arm. Chief Thompson's throat-clearing sliced through the air like a gavel. Kevin steeled himself. A dressing down. Temporary suspension. A transfer to records, the horrors spun through his mind, each more crushing than the last. Then, laughter erupted. A hearty, resonant sound that shook the very air. It wasn't aimed at him. It originated from the driver of the powder blue classic convertible. Harold, always the rule follower, she declared, her voice easily carrying. The engine died, and the sudden quiet amplified the trilling of crickets from the nearby park. Even when the rules obscure what's right. She unfolded herself from the vehicle with unexpected grace for a woman who clearly appreciated a good dessert. Her vibrant floral dress was a splash of color against the sea of stoic faces surrounding her. Chief Thompson approached her, a smile tugging at his lips. Mom, he sighed, shaking his head, I can't just let you gallivant around town like some renegade operative. Renegade operative? A melodious chuckle. Darling, I practically invented renegade operations. Before half these officers were born. Her pointed glance at Kevin held both severity and amusement. He finally looked up. Time had etched its patterns around her eyes, but her jaw was firm, her gaze unwavering. He detected something else, too, a glimmer of comprehension, maybe even a touch of sympathy. The chief faced Kevin, his expression hardening. Officer O'Malley, he stated, his tone even but firm, this is my mother, Eleanor Thompson. She was among the first women in uniform, back when they wouldn't issue her proper gear, let alone a cruiser. She patrolled on foot, knew every inch of this town, and earned the respect of its citizens the hard way. The puzzle pieces clicked together. The chief's inner conflict. The officer's knowing glances. The vintage car. The sheer chutzpah of the woman. Kevin's shoulders sagged. He understood now that it wasn't merely about seniority, it was about earned respect, experience, and challenging expectations. Eleanor Thompson's smile was genuine, radiating warmth. Don't fret, son, she said, her voice gentler. We all stumble. The key is to learn when we do. She settled back into her car, the leather groaning softly. Kevin stood straighter, his hands snapping up in a sharp salute. Respectfully, ma'am, he said, his voice steady. He would cultivate attentiveness, shed his biases. He would learn. Eleanor Thompson mirrored the salute, a mischievous glint in her eye and a nod of her head. The engine rumbled, and the blue convertible glided down the street, swallowed by the night. Chief Thompson gave Kevin a reassuring clap on the back. "Welcome to the force, son," he said, a ghost of a smile gracing his face. "Welcome to the family."